Your methodology is antiquated, Eli. Marcus Thorne said the words with a practiced smoothness, sliding a single sheet of paper across the vast, polished surface of his desk. It wasn't a termination notice. It was something far more insulting. My name is Elijah Cole. I'm 52 years old, and until this very moment, I was the head of safety for Apex Industrial Solutions' entire regional operations. I have spent 3 decades in this field, and this was the first time I was being punished for doing my job with integrity. I gave a slow, deliberate nod. I took off the hard hat that felt like a part of me and placed it gently on his desk, a silent protest against the sterile, untouched wood. The plant manager's office was all glass and cold steel, smelling faintly of expensive air freshener. Through the floor-to-ceiling window behind him, I could see the sprawling heart of the plant. I saw the young technicians on the catwalks near the main turbines. I saw them moving with a speed that I knew, deep in my gut, came from cutting corners. "Aren't you going to say anything?" Marcus asked, leaning back in his ergonomic chair, a picture of corporate ease. But I saw the slight tremor in the hand that held his $1,000 pen. He was a man who lived by spreadsheets and projections, and he was unnerved by the unquantifiable variable of a man who might just tell him to go to hell. "There's nothing to say, Marcus," I replied, my voice steady as I pushed myself to my feet. "I'll clear out my office." He looked taken aback, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. Men like Marcus thrive on arguments. They need the conflict to validate their cold calculations. When you deny them that fight, you leave them alone with the quiet truth of their decisions. "Look, Eli," he started, his voice shifting into a tone of synthetic reason. "This isn't personal. We just have different philosophies on risk management in a competitive landscape. Your way is thorough, but our targets require a more agile approach." I nodded once more, the movement tight with restraint. "I understand." Then I turned my back on him and walked out of the glass cage. The plant floor was a symphony of controlled power. The deep hum of the generators vibrated through the concrete beneath my feet. The scent of ozone and hot metal hung in the air. Good men worked here. Skilled technicians and engineers with families they loved, who deserved to return to them whole and unharmed at the end of every shift. Men who were now working near pressure lines with bypassed gauges and next to emergency shutoffs that were partially blocked by hastily stored equipment. All for the sake of a deadline. I cleaned out my office with a heavy heart. The worn work gloves, my spare steel-toed boots, the rows of safety manuals I knew by heart. From the corkboard, I carefully unpinned a photo of my wife and me on our anniversary, and the one of my daughter beaming on her first day of college. 3 decades of showing up, of doing the work the right way, of ensuring every single person made it home. And Marcus Thorne had been sent from headquarters less than 3 months ago. As I walked toward the parking lot with a single box of my life's work, Liam, one of my best young technicians, hurried to catch up. "Eli, is it true?" he asked, his voice low. "About what Marcus did." "He's reassigning me." I stated the fact without emotion, placing my box in the passenger seat of my old pickup. "He calls it a transfer to the historical archives." "That's just wrong, Eli," Liam said, his frustration clear. "It's a punishment because you wouldn't sign off on the Project Chimera shortcuts. What are you going to do?" I paused and looked back at the massive facility, at the men working under a false sense of security, at the risks being taken that would, sooner or later, demand a price in flesh and blood. I saw Marcus watching me from his window high above, a silhouette of detached authority. "What I should have started a month ago," I said. "I came to Apex right out of engineering school. I learned the systems from the ground up, from calibrating sensors to designing safety interlocks. I worked my way up with honesty and diligence. When I was 25, a young man full of ambition, I watched a dear friend and colleague die. He was killed in a flash explosion because a supervisor, chasing a production bonus, ordered a pressure test on a system that hadn't been properly cleared. That supervisor's name is lost to time, but my friend's face is something I see every single day. So when I finally became a safety chief, I made a vow. Everyone goes home. Apex hired me into this senior role 5 years ago to fix their safety culture after a string of incidents damaged their reputation. And I did. I implemented protocols that worked, training that saved lives, and a culture of trust. The company's incident rate plummeted. Productivity and morale soared. It turns out that people are more efficient when they aren't afraid of being maimed or killed. Then came Project Chimera. A massive upgrade, a punishing schedule, and with it came Marcus Thorne, the MBA from corporate, sent to make sure the numbers worked. The first week, he was all smiles and called me the conscience of the company. But the condescension was there from the start. By week 2, the real questions began. Eli, do the metrics truly support daily inspections on these valves? The statistical probability of failure is infinitesimal. This secondary containment system seems redundant. Surely our technicians are competent enough to handle these catalysts without it. Can we expedite the turbine startup sequence by bypassing the preliminary sensor checks? We're behind schedule. Each time, I would patiently explain the regulations. More than that, I explained the why behind them, the accidents they prevented, the lives they protected. With every explanation, his smile grew tighter, his gaze more dismissive. The breaking point was a morning briefing where I heard him tell my team to leverage operational efficiencies to meet the new, impossible milestone. It was corporate speak for, cut whatever corners you need to. I waited until the others had left and closed the door to the conference room. You can't encourage them to bypass safety procedures, I said, keeping my voice level. I didn't, he retorted, his eyes flashing with irritation. I empowered them to be innovative and results-oriented. Those procedures are what keep them alive, Marcus. He actually let out a short, sharp laugh. Come on, Eli. You've been around long enough to know the game. We write the safety reports to look good for the regulators and the board, but on the floor, we do what it takes to hit the numbers. Not on my watch. And that's the core of the problem. His voice turned to ice. You think this is still your watch? After that conversation, I began to build a file. I took pictures with my phone of the block shutoffs, the bypass gauges, the faulty warning lights. I made detailed notes of every conversation where he advocated for a dangerous shortcut, documenting the specific federal and state codes being violated. I saved copies of my formal emails expressing these concerns, all of which were met with polite, dismissive replies. My wife, Sarah, knew something was deeply wrong. You're not sleeping well, she said one evening, her hand resting on my arm. It's just work. Is it bad? She asked, her eyes full of concern. I could only nod. It's getting there. The final confrontation happened on a Tuesday morning. I came in at dawn to run a system check on the primary cooling loop for Reactor 3. I found 2 of the youngest technicians, including Owen, who just had a new baby, working on a high-pressure valve with the main lockout-tagout system completely bypassed. They were one wrong turn of a wrench away from a catastrophic failure. I shut the operation down instantly and had them begin the procedure again, the right way, the safe way. Marcus stormed onto the floor while I was personally verifying the new lockout. What in God's name is this, Cole? Why is my team standing around? They were working on a live system without a proper lockout, I said, my voice dangerously calm. They are now following the correct and legal procedure. We are already 24 hours behind on this phase, he hissed, his face reddening. The board is expecting an update. Then the board will be glad to know we averted a potential disaster that would have put this entire plant offline for months. He stepped right up to me, invading my personal space. I understand you have your comfort zone, your old way of doing things, he said, his voice a low growl. But Apex can't afford to have its progress dictated by an outdated, zero-risk mentality. I stopped what I was doing and turned to face him fully. Zero-risk mentality? This is a federally mandated safety protocol. It's a protocol for inspectors, he sneered. Be a team player for once, Eli. In that moment, a cold clarity washed over me. I had been trying to reason with him, to appeal to a sense of decency I now realized he utterly lacked. He wasn't ignorant of the risks. He simply didn't care. Those are my men over there, I said quietly, the anger in me a low, steady burn. Owen has a newborn daughter. They trust me to make sure they see their families again. They're professionals. They're responsible for their own safety. I stared at him, truly seeing the void behind his eyes for the first time. That is not how this works. That is not how any of this works. Look, he sighed, trying one last time to sound reasonable. Just sign off on the abbreviated procedure for this one instance. I'll take full responsibility in my report. No, you won't, I said, the words flat and final. You'll blame them, or you'll blame me. You'll blame whoever is most convenient for your career. His face hardened into a mask of cold fury. Is that a refusal to follow a direct managerial instruction? It is a refusal to falsify a critical safety document. Yes. He held my gaze for a long second. Then we have a serious problem. I nodded, the truth of it settling in my bones. Yes, Marcus. We do. That afternoon, I compiled all my evidence, the photos, the logs, the unanswered emails, and filed a formal request for an internal safety audit, citing gross negligence under Project Chimera. I sent it directly to the Chief Compliance Officer at headquarters. The response was a deafening silence. The next morning, I was summoned to Marcus's office and given my new assignment in the archives. As I drove home from the plant, the initial shock gave way to a strange and profound calm. There was no more conflict raging inside me. No more trying to fix a system that was designed to be broken. The path forward was suddenly, terrifyingly clear. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my truck for a long moment, looking at the home Sarah and I had built. The life we had made through hard, honest work. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I now knew I should have called weeks ago. Federal Safety and Workplace Bureau, how can I direct your call? My name is Elijah Cole, I said, my voice firm. I need to report a series of willful and systemic safety violations at an Apex Industrial Solutions plant. I can assist you with that, sir, the operator replied. Can you describe the nature of the alleged violations? I have digital documentation, photographic evidence, dates, names, and a record of management actively ordering these violations. There was a brief pause, followed by the rapid sound of typing. Are you a current employee at this facility, Mr. Cole? No, I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. I was effectively removed from my duties this morning for refusing to falsify a safety inspection. I see. The operator's voice became sharper, more focused. In that case, sir, please hold. I'm transferring you to our Office of Special Investigations. An investigator will want to take your statement immediately. The FSWB investigator, a woman named Eva Roth, met me in a small, discreet cafe the following morning. She was sharp and focused, her expression serious. She placed a small digital recorder on the table between us, her notebook already open. Mr. Cole, please walk me through the timeline from the beginning, she said, her tone professional, but not unkind. I told her everything. The arrival of Marcus. The shift in company culture from safety to speed. The specific, documented violations under Project Chimera. The internal audit request that was ignored, and the punitive reassignment that followed. And you have all of this evidence compiled? She asked, her eyes intent. I slid a small, encrypted flash drive across the table. Every photo is time-stamped and geotagged. Every email is there. I also have audio memos I dictated to myself after every critical conversation with Marcus. It's all organized. She took the drive and secured it in her briefcase. This is an extraordinarily well-documented case, Mr. Cole. I've spent my entire life in this industry, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I know what happens when men like Marcus are allowed to gamble with other people's lives. She nodded, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. We will begin a preliminary review immediately. Our whistleblower protections are robust, which means Apex cannot legally retaliate against you. She paused, seeing the grim look on my face. But they already have, haven't they? They demoted me before I officially filed this report with you, I explained. It muddies the waters. Not necessarily, she countered. The statutes also protect those who raise internal safety concerns. We should definitely open a parallel inquiry into retaliatory action. She gave me her card, which listed her as a special investigator for the OSI. For now, stay quiet. We will likely move to conduct an unannounced inspection within the week. We may need you to confirm some details when that happens. I left the cafe feeling a profound sense of relief. The gears of justice were finally turning. The system was going to work. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Liam. Eli, you need to hear this, he said, his voice hushed and urgent. Marcus held a plant-wide meeting this morning after you left. He told everyone you were reassigned pending an investigation into data mismanagement. He said you were improperly accessing and distributing proprietary company files. A cold dread washed over me. That's a complete fabrication. Of course it is, and anyone who really knows you knows that. But he's building a narrative, Eli. He said that anyone found communicating with you about company matters would be implicated in the investigation. He's trying to poison the well and intimidate any witnesses, I murmured, the strategy becoming sickeningly clear. It gets worse. Liam continued. He had some lawyer from corporate give a presentation about protecting company assets and the legal penalties for sharing trade secrets. They're making everyone sign updated, more restrictive non-disclosure agreements. After I hung up, my hands were shaking with a rage, so cold it felt like ice in my veins. I immediately called Investigator Roth to update her. She listened without interruption, a heavy silence on her end of the line. This accelerates everything, she said finally, her voice strained. This is active, overt obstruction. We're moving the inspection up. We'll go in tomorrow. But just an hour later, she called me back, and the frustration in her voice was palpable. We've hit a wall, Mr. Cole. A major one. Apex's legal team has filed a preemptive counter-complaint against you with the Bureau. They're accusing you of corporate espionage, claiming you stole confidential design schematics and operational data. They are demanding the return of all stolen assets before they will consent to any on-site inspection. That's not how the FSWB is supposed to operate, I said, my heart sinking. No, it's not, she agreed, the anger in her voice barely concealed. But they have friends in Washington. Someone with influence is putting their thumb on the scale to slow this down. So what does this mean for the investigation? It means we have to fight them through legal channels, and that will take time. Weeks, maybe months. They're also submitting falsified reports claiming that all the potential safety issues you flagged have already been remediated, which makes our job of proving willful negligence much harder. I ended the call and sat at my kitchen table, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Marcus wasn't just defending himself. He was methodically discrediting me, turning me from a whistleblower into a criminal. My phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from a source I didn't recognize, but I knew it had to be Noah. They're scrubbing the logs, running a massive data cleanup overnight, altering historical maintenance records. Just wanted you to know. They were digitally erasing the past. By the time any investigator ever set foot in that plant, it would be a fiction, a perfectly compliant illusion. Marcus wasn't just trying to save himself. He was ensuring that the deadly risks would remain, buried under layers of lies, waiting for the next person to pay the price. The next morning, I drove to a small park near the industrial district where some of the off-shift techs sometimes ate lunch. As I'd hoped, I found Liam, Noah, and Owen at a secluded picnic table. They waved me over, their expressions a mixture of concern and defiance. "Should you guys be seen with me?" I asked as I sat down. This could cost you your jobs. Liam gave a humorless laugh. We're on a public bench on our own time. Besides, they can't fire the entire technical staff. They're running a full-court press back there, Eli, Noah said, leaning in. It's an army of IT consultants, optimizing our data, they call it. They're fixing everything you ever wrote a report about, Owen added, looking nervous. It's like they're following your list as a guide. So they're admitting in their own way that every single one of my concerns was valid, I said bitterly. They just refused to act until they got caught. Owen, the young father, fidgeted with his phone. There's more, Eli. I was near the admin offices yesterday, and I heard Marcus on a conference call. He was talking about you. He said they needed to dig into your entire work history, find anything they could use to neutralize the threat. A chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air went down my spine. They're not just defending, they're attacking. I don't think this is just Marcus anymore, Liam said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. I think this goes all the way to the top. What makes you say that? He exchanged a look with Noah, who nodded. Noah pulled a small, nondescript tablet from his backpack, powered it on, and slid it over to me. On the screen was a forwarded email chain. The subject line read, Project Chimera, Aggressive Timeline Implementation. The body of the lead email was chillingly direct. The board has signed off on the revised schedule. Standard safety protocols can be adjusted as operationally necessary to achieve the Q4 completion target. All official documentation must reflect full and unwavering compliance, irrespective of field-level modifications. The Chimera model, if successful, will become the new standard for all future Apex projects. A revised executive bonus structure is attached. The sender's name was at the bottom. Silas Blackwood, the founder and CEO of Apex Industrial Solutions. Where did you get this? I asked, my voice hoarse. Marcus is arrogant, Noah said quietly. He stays logged into the main server on his office desktop. I was running a diagnostic nearby and happened to see his inbox. I stared at the screen, the pieces of the puzzle falling into a sickeningly clear picture. This wasn't a single manager's ambition. This was a deliberate, top-down corporate strategy written in black and white. They were beta testing a plan to sacrifice safety for profit on Project Chimera, with the intent to roll it out across the entire company. Q4 is impossible, I breathed. That's a full quarter ahead of any realistic, safe schedule. That's why they sent Marcus, Liam said grimly. He's the guy they call when they need the impossible done, and they don't care how he does it. He delivers the results, and he's an expert at making sure someone else takes the fall if it all goes sideways, Owen added. I handed the tablet back to Noah, my mind racing. Has he done this before? The three of them looked at each other, a silent, grim understanding passing between them. There are stories, Owen said finally, about the Olympia gas plant project a few years back. There was a major incident, an explosion. A good engineer, a friend of one of our senior guys, was killed. The lead engineer on the project took all the blame, Liam added. They said he was negligent, that he cut corners. The company buried him. Word was, the real problem was faulty equipment and a rushed timeline, but he was blacklisted from the industry. He had to change careers completely. I pulled out my phone and made a note. Olympia Gas Plant Project. I need to find that engineer. What's the plan, Eli? Liam asked, his face etched with worry. Owen chimed in. They're erasing all the evidence. They're painting you as a criminal. My brother-in-law is in HR. He said they're building a termination file on you that claims you were stealing and selling company secrets for months. I looked at these three men. Good, brave men who just wanted to be safe at their jobs. They were risking everything to sit here with me. They were being endangered every day by executives in a boardroom 1,000 miles away. I'm not sure of the whole plan yet, I said, my voice low but steady. But I know one thing. What they're doing isn't just a violation. It's a conspiracy. And it's not about Marcus Thorne anymore. This is about Silas Blackwood and the entire company he built. Driving home, the anger and fear began to coalesce into a cold, hard purpose. I couldn't just expose the dangers of Project Chimera. That wasn't enough. I had to expose the entire rotten system, from the boardroom to the plant floor. To do that, I needed more than just data logs and pictures. I needed a human story. I needed evidence they couldn't scrub from a server. And I knew exactly where I had to look for it. Finding Leo Martinez, the engineer who had been scapegoated for the Olympia gas plant project, was the next crucial step. The official channels were a dead end, his record sealed. But Apex had a private online forum for company retirees, a place where old-timers shared stories and kept in touch. I spent 2 days carefully crafting a post, a vague inquiry about the Olympia project, framed as an academic question about engineering challenges. Day later, I got a private message. "You're asking dangerous questions. If you're serious, let's talk." It was from a retired maintenance supervisor who had trusted Leo. He gave me a new name and a location, a small auto repair shop in a forgotten town in rural Idaho. It was a world away from the high-tech world of engineering. I arranged to meet him via a secure video call. When Leo's face appeared on my screen, I barely recognized him from the old company photo I'd found. The bright, confident engineer was gone, replaced by a man who looked haunted, the weariness etched so deep in his features it seemed permanent. "I appreciate you talking to me, Leo," I began. "Wasn't sure I was going to answer the call," he admitted, his voice rough. "Apex Industrial isn't a name I like to hear. I understand completely. I was a safety chief for them. Until last week." His eyes, shadowed with old pain, narrowed slightly. "Was? I was removed for raising safety concerns on a major project." "Let me guess," he said, a bitter, humorless smile touching his lips. "Does the name Marcus Thorne mean anything to you?" My nod was all the confirmation he needed. The shared experience was a bridge between us, built of betrayal. "He's using the same playbook, Leo," I said. "Just on a new victim." He stared past his screen, looking at a memory I couldn't see. "They will ruin you, you know. That's his specialty. When he's done, you'll be radioactive in the industry. A fraud, a liar, a man who endangered his colleagues. Only if I stand by and let him," I countered. "I'm not standing by. I'm fighting back, and I believe you can help me." He gave a hollow laugh. "Help you how?" I tried to fight. I filed reports. I talked to a lawyer. No one would listen. One man dies, and they call it a tragic accident. Apex has a legal department the size of a small army. "But it wasn't just a tragic accident, was it?" I asked softly. "It wasn't just your project. It was a pattern." He fell silent, the silence stretching for a full minute as he wrestled with ghosts. "No," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't." Over the next hour, Leo poured out the whole story. How Marcus had been brought in to accelerate the Olympia project. How the pressure mounted daily. How his documented concerns about substandard materials and rushed inspections were systematically ignored. And how, when a critical valve failed and caused the explosion that killed his best friend, Marcus had already prepared a dossier of falsified reports and forged inspection sign-offs with Leo's name on them. "I never signed those papers," Leo insisted, his voice cracking with a decade of suppressed grief and anger. "He forged my signature, but they moved so fast. By the time I could even process what had happened, I was fired. I was the villain in the press. My friend's family filed a wrongful death suit against me, not against Apex." "Did you keep anything?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Any records, emails, anything at all?" He hesitated, his gaze dropping. "For a long time, I tried to forget. I was just trying to survive, to put my life back together. But I backed up my work computer before they locked me out. Everything. I have it all on an old hard drive in my desk. I never looked at it again." "There's one more thing," he said, his voice dropping even lower. The final project meeting where Marcus and the director ordered us to use the cheaper, uncertified valves. I thought it was insane. I turned on the voice recorder on my phone, just to cover myself. I have the whole meeting on audio. My breath caught in my throat. It was the smoking gun. The one piece of evidence they could never erase. Leo, that recording changes everything. Will you share it with me? Combine it with the evidence I have? He looked at me through the screen, his eyes searching my face. For what? He asked, the exhaustion clear in his voice. The FSWB is a joke. They're toothless. The system is rigged for guys like Blackwood and Thorne. I'm not going to the FSWB, I said firmly. Not anymore. I'm thinking bigger. If we can prove this is a pattern of criminal behavior directed from the very top of the company. A light I thought had been extinguished years ago flickered in Leo's eyes. You're talking about a criminal conspiracy. I nodded slowly. Willful violation of federal safety laws resulting in a death is a felony. With your audio file and my documentation, we can prove a pattern of racketeering. This goes beyond fines and sanctions. This is about putting the men responsible in prison. The Department of Justice? He whispered. For the first time since the call began, a spark of the old, defiant engineer returned to his face. You honestly believe we can make this stick? I can't do it alone, I said, putting all the conviction I felt into my voice. I need your evidence, Leo, and I need your voice. He was silent for a long, heavy moment. They took my career, he said, the words heavy with loss. They took my friend. They took my name. His jaw tightened with a resolve that had been buried for 10 years. Tell me exactly what you need me to do. For the next week, I lived and breathed the case. Leo overnighted me the hard drive, and I worked relentlessly, weaving his evidence from the Olympia project together with my own from Project Chimera. I created a damning, irrefutable timeline of corporate malfeasance. I reached out through the retiree forums and, with Leo's help, found 2 other engineers who had been pushed out under similar circumstances. They were afraid, but Leo's courage gave them courage. They agreed to provide sworn affidavits. Meanwhile, Liam kept feeding me updates. The cover-up at the plant was complete, but Marcus, overconfident, was already pushing the crews to cut new corners, creating new dangers. The monster was still hungry. On Friday morning, 2 weeks after my reassignment, I submitted the entire case file, hundreds of pages of documents, photos, affidavits, and one damning audio file to the Department of Justice's online portal for reporting industrial and corporate crime. The system was automated. I hit submit, and the package vanished into the digital ether. For 3 days, there was only silence. Then, on Monday morning, I got a call from a Washington, D.C. number. It was a lead prosecutor from the DOJ's criminal division. They had the file. They had listened to the tape. They were taking it seriously. The wheels of a much bigger, more powerful machine were beginning to turn. The raid didn't happen at the plant. It happened a week later at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. It happened at the gleaming glass and steel Apex Industrial Solutions corporate headquarters in Seattle. According to the news reports, a team of 24 agents from the FSWB's Office of Special Investigations and the FBI stormed the executive floor. They served a federal warrant in the middle of a quarterly board meeting. I imagined the scene with grim satisfaction. The shock on the faces of the polished board members. The sudden, panicked pallor of Silas Blackwood as he realized his carefully constructed world was collapsing. And Marcus Thorne, the golden boy, the ruthless implementer, his face turning to ash as he was read his rights. Investigators, armed with a precise list I had helped create, seized specific servers from the data center. They took every computer from the executive suite. They knew exactly what they were looking for because Leo and I had given them the map. I didn't need to be there to see it. The system, the real system, was finally working. 3 months later, I sat in a spacious corner office, looking at the architectural plans for a new state-of-the-art manufacturing facility. As the new vice president of safety for the firm that had acquired Apex's non-toxic assets after its bankruptcy, I had the final say on every safety protocol for all their new projects. My phone buzzed with a news alert. A small, tight smile touched my lips as I read the headline. Apex executives, including CEO Silas Blackwood, indicted on federal racketeering and manslaughter charges. The article detailed a sweeping federal indictment. Blackwood, Marcus, and 3 other executives faced a battery of criminal charges: conspiracy, falsification of records, obstruction of justice, and, most importantly, criminal negligence leading to the death of an employee at the Olympia gas plant. If convicted, they were all facing significant time in federal prison. The company was gone, its name a permanent stain on the industry. Leo Martinez had been publicly and completely exonerated. The settlement he received from the Apex bankruptcy estate would allow him to live comfortably for the rest of his life. But more than the money, he had his name back. My phone rang. It was Liam. He was now the lead safety engineer at my new company's largest plant. "Did you see the news, Eli?" he asked, his voice filled with a triumphant energy. "I just saw it. They're saying that the Project Chimera upgrades have to be completely torn down and rebuilt. The structural and safety flaws were too deep to fix." There was a deep satisfaction in his voice. "Some might call that karma. I just call it the cost of doing things the wrong way," I replied. After we hung up, I walked to the large window overlooking the site of our new project. I saw teams of workers moving with the quiet confidence that comes from a safe, well-organized environment. Every safety rail was in place. Every piece of equipment was up to code. Every person on that site was properly trained and protected. No one would be asked to cut a corner. No one would be forced to choose between their job and their life. I didn't need to see Marcus Thorne in a prison jumpsuit to feel the victory. The proof was right here, in front of me. It was the sight of men and women doing honest work, secure in the knowledge that at the end of the day, they would all go home safe. That was the only victory that had ever mattered.